The history of firefighting, your involvement with firefighting as a firefighter and also a fire truck builder. We touched on that a little bit. We also just briefly touched on lean or lean flow concepts. We've got a lot of lean flow kind of continuous ed that we're doing right now at Wisconsin Lighting Lab. And when we touched on in the WiLLcast, we thought that there was quite a bit of lean in firefighting. And after the podcast, we talked a little bit more, and we realized that there's actually certain things within firefighting that are the opposite of lean. So I just thought it'd be cool to dig a little bit deeper into that. But now that we've had a couple weeks, what's your current thought on that topic, firefighting and lean, and if it is lean or isn't?
There's a good start. There are pieces that are extremely lean, and there are pieces that are extremely not lean.
Yeah.
I mean, there are, when you talk, you go through it and you look at like a 5S or an organization, I can tell you sitting right here what tool is in what compartment on what truck, and it's the same on both trucks. I mean, that part of it, lean through and through. I mean, it's got a location. We know what's there. We know how it's there. We know what it's used for. When you talk about the amount of stuff, again, we talked about the first truck out the door for us, always the same engine, no matter if it's a cat in the tree, a fire call, a structure fire. We have an abundance of equipment. I mean, so there's always, we have to be able to solve the problem. So that thing is stuffed to the max with every possible scenario. And that's part of, firefighting. You can't show up on scene and not have what you need, because there's a public perception as well that has to be played into this. But so for that fact, yes, 100% not lean. And we touched on it last time too. The inputs, right? So the customer, the person calling is not a trained firefighter. You call 911. You're not necessarily giving the correct information. You try to get it weeded out, but you get dispatched quick. So that,
but that's not unlike a customer.
Correct.
So I think one of the things about lean is it's customer focused, customer driven, and it's a pull system. So I think that's fundamentally where the whole operation is responding to immediate demand. So that is happening within firefighting. And I think there's codes and things that the dispatchers they classify the call. So it is demand based. But I think where it's not lean is that you're trying to solve for every scenario. Where in manufacturing, the more specific you can have the tool, the line, the equipment, the skill set, the inventory, the more lean it actually is. So you guys have an abundance of inventory in the form of tools and preparation. I think that's the disconnect.
100%. Yeah, the front end. So what I'll relate it to, and I'll tie this back to my sales team here. I mean, the customer doesn't call the manufacturing team. They call the sales team. We weed out all the minutia and get it boiled into what, without that layer, there has to be a layer, to be able to get it clean. Because, again, we can't if you send stuff not clean to the floor. I mean, this is the sales force, and they operate the way we're set up.
The sales team is the customer interface it's like the graphical user interface on a computer.
100%.
That's what the sales team is.
Which is what dispatch is. I mean, when the callers call in, I mean, they are frantic. They're usually panicked. It's usually a bad day for them.
Yep.
They call dispatch. Dispatch is very clear, clear and calm, and they go into lean mode. It's very specific questions. While they're taking questions, the person sitting next to them is dispatching, and there's a lot of back and forth and listening. And we don't have, a lot of times we'll get dispatched without complete information, and we get it en route.
So yeah, it's definitely lean. It's a pull system.
Yes.
And it's a pull. It's kind of a pull system. You're also the fire truck is a warehouse of inventory. So that's
more inventory than we ever need. We may use a compartment per. For us, we kind of have it set up. It's a car accident. We're going to this compartment.
Yep.
If it's a structure fire, we're going to use the hose bed in this compartment. Yep. The tools are in there. So yeah, from that standpoint, it's But that I will say a lot of times again because of the user inputs, it's dispatch's job is to get the information, get us out as quickly as possible. We then are in control and. The users, I think we touched on this one, but they may call it in as, hey, my cat stuck in a tree, and we show up and there's 3 houses on fire.
It would be the lighting equivalent to having adjustable wattage and color temperature in the field.
Yes.
Where you over-engineer the product because the information isn't as good as it could be. Therefore, before it gets installed, you have to make adjustments. So it's that on steroids.
And when we show up, we have to solve the problem.
Yeah,
there is no other.
True.
There is no
that's
other
true.
option. You can't call the fire department because the fire department's already there.
Yep.
We are the last line of defense. So it is a Yeah, it's really interesting as I've been thinking about the last couple of weeks and relating it back and forth. And I mean, the train, yes, we overtrain and we overtrain and we overtrain. That is because it makes us really lean on. So I mean, we train. Yep. You know, when I look at it, if I tell one of my firefighters, go grab the flathead axe, they know what compartment in, where it is, so they don't have to think about it.
But if you had more specific, so I think one of the things to think about would be is, what would a fire station look like if it was run like a lean manufacturing facility? I think the first thing would be much larger, and you would have dedicated cells for every single situation. So you may have, based on certain calls, you could bring a UTV with an axe and a fire extinguisher. Other calls, you would need the full-blown like truck, and I'm sure that happens to some degree. But I think also from that standpoint, you also have to train because you don't always know what's going to happen. So if you could connect what is known to the tool that's required, it would open up the supply of people that would be available to actually join the department.
Yeah, it's more granular than overall arch. Because we're trained. I mean, we don't know what we're going to get called. Like people call for anything, and it's weird, random stuff. And being in we'll call ourselves an urban community. I mean, we get a lot of work. I mean, hey, my basement's filling with water. Can you come help? Public service type stuff. And it's a community aspect, and the fire department's usually the center. But yeah, I've thought a lot about what does it look like, and how could you do?
Is it because you don't know what you don't know what the requirement is, or you don't, or there's too many tools to have to use to solve it?
It's the unknown. Okay. It's the unknown customer requirement.
Once you get there.
If the customer was trained to call 911 and tell us that would change everything. If the problem is it's a speed to lead type thing. When we have to get they're not going to ask 100 questions and get dialed in and dispatch the right okay, you need to take a pickup in this tool, right? That's not their job, right? So everybody's it's divide and conquer, which again, not lean, right? I mean, this is the anti-lean. But I will say, coming from the fire truck manufacturing background, fire truck is the anti-lean of everything. Yep. I mean, there's,
it's a rolling manufacturing facility.
It is, and it's the truck itself. There are bells and whistles on that thing. The chrome, again, there's a community aspect to the truck itself. And it's always the first thing. Usually the sheriff goes first in the parade, and then it's the fire department. Yep. Right? Because they're shiny fire. There's a lot of pride in those trucks. Does it need to have chrome and be shiny and be spit shined every time it's sitting in the station? No. But that also, when you talk about lean, a lot of that's clean and cleanliness and having that together. There is an aspect of that. Like, we don't get back from a call and just wash the fire truck to wash the fire truck. It's wash the fire truck, count the tool. Is everything back where it should go? So next time we get called, we're ready.
That's very lean.
So that aspect of it completely. But it's the chrome, the amount of expense. I mean, I built fire trucks. I get it. There's a lot of tradition that's really hard to break.
And that has value. I mean, that's, like you said, there's community value. Maybe not for the task at hand.
Solving the customer's problems, no.
Yeah.
But
it weighs the truck down. That means the truck could get there faster. I mean, it could accelerate faster.
Correct.
Out of
I mean,
the
you're
station.
talking a high horsepower, 400 horse engine and a water tank. I mean, there's a lot of weight. I mean, we are weighted down. So that aspect of it. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations. About what would it look like specific. You could do, you can get, it went from really big fire trucks, and then in like the 80s, early 90s, everybody went to these fast attacks. So they got smaller. They put like rescue trucks on pickups, and what they what happens then, it's a changing requirement too. The construction of houses changed. Old farmhouses, you could burn for an hour and still go in it. In today's lightweight construction, everything's glued together. It changes. It burns.
Density of the wood.
It's the wood itself, and then it's all the materials in it, all the synthetic stuff. Yep. Like an old farmhouse, you could go in and fight that fire.
Basically chemical fires.
Correct.
With all the new.
So you've got not only extra stuff to breathe. I mean, this is why SCBA's like breathing apparatus. There's guys in my department that they've been on long enough they didn't have them, and they're not that old. Yeah. So you look back, they just hold their breath and run in the smoke and come out when they need air. Right. I mean,
is there a partnership or a coalition between like building councils and firefighting councils?
100%.
Okay.
They usually butt heads because the fire department, the fire codes will say any building over 2 stories has to have a sprinkler system. Yep. And they'll try to skirt the rules because it adds a ton of cost to add a sprinkler system. But from a life-saving standpoint, this is why you don't see So back in like this, I think it was like the 60s, hotel fires a bunch of people used to die in hotel fires. Then they made it sprinklers mandated, and that essentially is dropped to zero because the sprinkler will contain the fire and people can get out. They can self-rescue. So that is like there's a lot of history and a lot of change, but it changes with construction and the way things operate. And firefighting used to be they fight structure fires. Today, 80% of our calls are medical related, right? So now we're shifting into this medical, and trucks are going to, okay, how can we respond to medical calls, right, with the same crew, because there's a cost associated with that from a taxpayer standpoint, but still have your equipment in case you get a fire call, because you can't go back to if you ever go online and watch videos, like people record everything, like fires, people just drive, they want to drive to fires, and they call them rubberneckers. They look, they want to see it, and they're always videotaping. You're always in the public eye. So the problem is if you get there and you stand around like we don't have the right equipment, like you look really bad. And then the the internet jockeys get on it and they start commenting on these videos, and it's like well, you guys have no idea.
Just trying to do your job,
right? And so but there's like. There is that perception, but yes, we touched on there are extreme lean, and then there is extreme not lean, and I think we covered the reasons pretty good as to why each exist. But the inputs in my mind, or the engineer in me, right, says like the inputs, the cleaner those are, the easier it is to lean it up on the back end, and those inputs are, it's pretty chaotic, right? We're trained, right? The first 10 minutes of a call from dispatch to that, like that'll make or break the next 4 hours. Yeah. So, the truck positioning and there's a lot of things that have to happen in sequence, and there's a lot of action going on. From the time let's say a structure fire, the person calls dispatch within a minute, we're probably dispatched. If if it's the middle of the night, you think about what happens in sequence. Someone's, whether they're trapped or not, their neighbor called it in. Dispatch is now aware. They dispatch us and our automatic aid partners. You're automatically waking up about 60 firefighters and their significant others. So you've got 120 people now aware of this, and it's a scramble mode, right? You've got people, on the radio. You got people going to the scene. You got people going to get trucks. You've got a lot of this. There's a lot of moving pieces in that first, and then stuff showing up on scene. You're trying to give direction, trying to assess the situation. It is. It's chaos. It's controlled chaos. Yep. But that is there is. We are taught and we operate this way. Call for help. You can always send them home. Anti-lean 100%. Right. we will dispatch more than we need almost always, and it's a lot easier to turn them around. And this is why you see fire trucks a lot. You'll see trucks coming down the road, and you'll see them come full lights and sirens. They'll come to a stop sign, they'll shut them off, they'll turn around and go back. Yep. That is because of the way, the history and the way, certain alarm levels get certain dispatch. Someone gets on scene, assesses, turns them away. Again, talking lean, why'd we dispatch that truck? It's because if you do need them, you need them within the minutes, not within, you can't ask for them.
Are fire hydrants hooked up to the truck? So fire hydrants are supplying the truck. You're not hooking a hose right up to the hydrant.
You're supplying. You pump through the truck. So hydrant.
The truck is the pump.
Correct. So the hydrant has about 50 psi, and we need to pump it anywhere from 100 to 200, depending on the hose line and configuration. So you run it through the truck. Yep. You pump it through the truck, and then you disperse it out of the lines, the discharges on the truck. So
interesting. Yeah, it seemed like there'd be more point of use firefighting, like more hydrants with more capacity. Rather than having that mobile reservoir, the mobile pump, essentially.
Right. Well, it's an expense, right?
Yeah.
So if you go to pump at every hydrant location,
yeah.
There's expense associated with that. So you do the mobile.
Yeah.
We've talked about, you go engineering-wise, you talk about autonomous trucks, and can we dispatch and have that show up on scene, especially volunteer. The future, I think, will change a lot of that. You'll have, stuff could, with the autonomous driving and vehicles and trucks, a lot of that stuff will show up on scene. They're still positioning things that, but a lot of, there will be changes in the tactics. Again, the fire industry is very traditional, right? And it's that way for a reason, but it also looks back on history a lot. And they're changing much quicker now.
Yeah,
than
there's
they
also
ever have.
a clear incentive to innovate. There's lives at stake, and the firefighter safety.
Yep, 100%. In my previous life, we've talked about this, but the fire world, new product development is more strict than any of the defense stuff I've ever seen in my career. The defense stuff is a kind of, it's new product. Like, it's less like the fire stuff. You will sign NDAs. You will be locked in a unmarked building, and we will do crazy things to keep the competition from knowing what's going on. It is really, really wild, from that aspect. And it's super competitive, but it is really innovative. There's a ton of innovation that comes from, a lot of the innovation that came from, Pierce went back into military vehicles.
Yep.
I mean, it went the other direction within Oshkosh Corp. It's kind of cool to see, how that stuff happened. It's driven by, firefighters are innovative by nature because they want to be able to do their job better. They create a lot of tools. Almost every tool that we have on the truck is named after an ex-firefighter because they've cobbled together whatever they could, and shops and their home shops.
The field engineering. Right?
I can do this. I can do this better, and that gets refined and things. But yeah, it's a very interesting side of things. So you talk, I look at it's from our operation to the large Fortune 300 operation, right, that I've come from, to the firefighting side of how that operates. It's all kinds of different aspects, right? And it's really interesting to see on what works, what doesn't. I mean, I'm really intrigued. I mean, I've thought a lot about this lean thing from a leadership in the fire department. It is. There are aspects of it, right? I mean, there are things that definitely can be done, moving forward. But a lot of that's overcoming the tradition and just being smart about it. But it's good. I mean, it's a rewarding experience if anybody wants to do it. So look at the camera there. So definitely join your volunteer department. They're definitely looking. So.
Yep. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming back for part 2.
Awesome. Thanks. Yep.